Welcome back, beloveds, to the Connected Pleasure podcast. I am here today with a wonderful guest. I had the privilege of being on Andrew's podcast that I hope you go listen to. But today I get to sit down with Andrew Phipps, who is just one of the warmest, most beautiful men that I've ever met in my late life so far. I feel like your presence is so warm, and I really enjoy getting to sit and talk with you. So I'm so glad that I get to have you today. Andrew is the host of do you have 2 podcasts? I wanted
2, 2.
okay,
So the one we talked on was the intimacy inquiry, which
right.
is where we look at the things that should be discussed, but often
Yes.
aren't, about intimacy, relationships, connections. And then the other one is about empathy, which is almost
Mhm.
more of a business one in a way, about how do we use
Mm.
and recognize empathy in people. I just have to warn your listeners and viewers really. So after the incredibly kind build up, I'm bound to disappoint now. So, this is, if listeners see this as the peak, accept things are gonna go downhill, but thank you so much for that. Yeah, that incredibly warm introduction. That was so kind.
Well, I think you're gonna live up to it. I'd have no doubt. So I'm really interested, Andrew, to know your background. You kind of started with background with me too, which is always a great place to start when you're getting
Mhm,
to know somebody. And it sounds like you, as many, have kind of gone from corporate world into now being, I'm guessing, just a podcaster or, supporting yourself in a different way monetarily.
mhm.
So, and I said just a podcaster, not just a podcaster. You are a podcaster. Doing a podcast is a business. It's a lot, and you do a lot of episodes, so don't wanna qualify it with just. You are a podcaster. You are somebody that is connecting with people all of the time. So can you tell me, like, what was that journey like for you of deciding corporate life was no longer something you wanted to be involved in, and
Mm,
how did you get also into podcasting? How did you decide that that was something that you wanted to do?
that's a good question. And if you're okay, I'll just go back a little bit further.
Sure.
So my background. So I grew up the son of a coal miner, and my
Mm,
grandparents were coal miners. Well, the grandfathers were, not the grandmothers. And my uncle were, so they lived in a sort of coal fields in the north of England in a relatively, yeah, we didn't have very much money. It was sort of a council house. It was a public housing, I guess you would call it. Worked in a coal mine, and then hated school. Really,
mhm,
really just couldn't. I was always a person that wanted to know why, and is there a different way? And I think if you're a teacher of a class of 30, you don't hear that. You just got a
mhm.
curriculum to stick to, and that's it. So I left
Yeah.
school as soon as I could, didn't go to university. I went straight to work and, yeah, moved to London, and I think my life started then really. So almost fell into lots of different jobs
Mhm.
and ended up, my last corporate role was in a big global corporate real estate company, which sounds terrible, but I loved it. And the reason I loved it was I was so fortunate. I had a team of 300 or 400 people across the world in different countries, got to go and travel to meet them. And my whole passion was just for spending time with people.
Mhm.
I was always one of the people that I never, ever, and thankfully this rarely happened, I never, ever wanted to be the cleverest person in the room. I
Mhm.
just wasn't. I just had amazing people around me, got to work with
Mhm.
some really talented people. Saw people that came in as sort of, relatively junior individuals, progressing on and moving to new companies and just doing great things, and I really loved that.
Yeah.
And during COVID, I think lots of us had that pause and sort of
Mhm.
something. I was working from home all the time, working harder than I'd ever worked in my life. Every day was a 16, 18-hour day, just trying to make sure everybody else is okay. And coming to the end of that, I thought, I'm not sure this is really gonna fulfill me as I move into the latter part of my working life. So I decided to go back to education. I'd gone back and done an MBA about 15 years ago, which I really enjoyed. So I went back and did an MSc in behavior change, which I really enjoyed as well. And I thought, what's the thing I enjoy the most? I think it's talking to people, whether it's presenting to 10 people, 1,000 people. I used to love presenting, or it's talking one on one with somebody. I thought, well, let's just wonder if people might want to talk to me. Well, first of all, thinking, well, why would they? But I reached out to a few people, and yeah, 95% of people are incredibly kind and generous with their time. So I started the
Mhm.
empathy podcast. And then after a while, I thought, because I have a 16-year-old son, 18-year-old daughter. They were obviously younger at the time, sort of teenagers. And they came back from school after having what we call sort of sex ed.
Mhm.
And it was, it was perfunctory to say the least. And I sort of talked to them. We try and talk quite openly. So what do you talk about? So, well, we learned to put a condom on a banana, so it was useful. We learnt about STIs or sexual transmitted disease. We learnt a little bit about consent, which is good, which is progress.
Mhm.
Well, what about pleasure? What do they talk about intimacy and relationships and feelings and things? And oh, no, none of that. And I just wanted to create a space where people could talk openly about things that perhaps are not talked about enough. So I've been
Yeah.
fortunate to talk to people from porn actresses to sexologists to sex therapists to
Mhm.
Christian fundamentalists to whoever that just have a view on relationships. 'Cause I think fundamentally life has to be about relationships. I think
Mhm.
maybe we'll come on to it later on, but especially in light of how pervasive AI is becoming. The
Yeah.
one thing that you and I can do that's different than AI is you and I can have a relationship. You can have a
Right.
relationship with your partner, I can have a relationship with my partner, with my children, with my neighbors, with whoever. That's something AI can't do. And I think
Mhm.
that human connection, that ability to look at somebody and actually talk, I think is one of the most underrated skills that we have. Being able to have a conversation, I think, in light of social media and smartphones, all those things. It's so fundamental. So actually, I think the podcast I've been doing is a space where very selfishly I get an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours, 3 hours just to talk to somebody. So when
Yeah.
you and I talked, you really gave me your time. You were completely in the moment. You were completely focused. And I thought, well, she's really listening and really talking. And you just don't get that very often to sit and talk to somebody and I could talk to my wife, and I think my wife would say, well, when did we last sit down and talk for an hour and a half, just questioning each other? We just don't. So I think the podcast, long form podcast, at least gives the opportunity to actually really talk and get to know somebody a little bit. Um,
Mhm.
I don't know if that's answered the question at all, but so from coal mining to podcasting, that's, yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Quite
Thankfully,
the jump.
thankfully the coal mines closed before I'm not sure I ever saw myself as a coal miner.
Mhm. Yeah. I agree with long form podcasting. I hate social media for that reason, trying to say anything in like 30 seconds to potentially 3 minutes if you can get people to even
Yeah.
stay awake that long. It's really hard for me. I talk a lot and I like to connect with people, so I love the podcasting format for that as well. And yeah, it's really cool to see the evolution of people, and it sounds like during COVID was a big shift for you, as it was, I think, for a lot of people. And I don't know if you gave enough credit to the fact that it takes a lot of, one, understanding yourself and also courage to say, "Okay, well, I kinda did this, and now I'm gonna do something else, and just try it out and see how it goes." Like, that's a big jump to do in your life.
Yeah. I mean, I think being very transparent. So I'm in a fortunate position where
Mm,
the mortgage is paid.
mhm,
Madam's gone off to university. Alexander's got a couple more years at home. My wife works and brings in a salary. So I'm in a very fortunate position where I don't have to have a certain salary.
mhm,
Like saying podcast generates some money, some of the coaching I do generates some
mhm,
money, other income streams. So I think I was lucky in a way just to make the decision to step away, but also recognizing that whatever decision we make today, we can change tomorrow. So if I
Mhm.
decided I want to go back to corporate life,
Mhm.
I'm sure there'll be somebody foolish enough to give me a job. Um, it's just not where I want to be or
Mhm.
where I think I can. I'm not going to say I have the most value, but where I can just connect with a broad church of people. I think that's
Mhm.
what podcasting, talking, etc. allows you to do. So I totally agree about social media. Just having to cut everything down to 30 seconds or a number of characters, hoping that somebody will click on it, hoping that it goes viral. It feels like a sort of almost fast food relationships where you have one burger, but you want another one straight away. It's not filling. It's not a gourmet meal. It's just something that's very fast. And yes, it fills a hole for a very short period of time, but
Yeah.
immediately you want that next dopamine hit. And I think in the next 5, 10, 20 years, research will be done that proves how negative an impact social
Mhm.
media has had on people. But when you're living in it, it's a bit like, 80 years ago, cigarettes were prescribed by doctors as helping to clear your lungs. No, no, that's not good. These used to be adverts with doctors in saying, for the healthiest lungs, smoke Lucky Strike. What? And that's where social media is now. I think in
Mhm.
10, 20 years' time, it'll be seen as, an aberration that we perhaps live through, and hopefully it's relatively short in terms of
Yeah. Well, I think we're getting there. I think we're already, like, broaching that topic. I
yeah.
think there's a lot of people that don't want to hear that, but, yeah, I think we're already there. Because was it Australia that
Mm,
just banned
yeah, under
it
16.
for for teens?
Yeah, I've got some friends staying over Christmas from Australia because my wife's Australian, and the daughter was 15.
Mm.
And she was like, "Well, so I've had it for the last however many years. No, I'm not going to have it for 6 months."
I
And I really
know.
cared. So my son turns 16 on Saturday. He's thinking, well, even if the UK bring it in,
Mhm.
it's too late. So I think France are just about to vote on under 15s. I think the
Mhm.
education minister in the UK wrote a letter to all schools this week saying smartphones shouldn't be allowed in schools at all.
Mhm.
So I do think people are starting to recognise that. Yeah, 12, 13, 14-year-old, your brain's really developing so rapidly
Yeah.
that these mini hits of dopamine aren't taking it to good places necessarily.
Mhm. Yeah. So, to come back to relationships, after this change that you've had in your career life, how has that changed positively, negatively, neutrally the relationships in your life? Like being home more, being maybe around your kids more, or being more available to your wife? How has that changed in your life?
Mm, very interesting. So there's two sides to it, I guess. One side is that I miss the day-to-day interaction with people,
Mhm. Yeah.
and I used to enjoy dealing with all of the nonsense that work brings. So some who have an issue with their manager, and I deal with their manager. Some have an issue with their director, or an issue with this, or funding, or whatever. And I love being able to go in there and hopefully reconcile or bring people together. So I miss that day to day sphere of influence.
Mhm.
I do think, yeah. So for the children, I think, so Madeline was going through her last years of school, so A levels. So I was always here. Alexander for his next 2 years have got big exams coming up as well. So I'm physically here. So whether or not they say that's a good thing or not, I'm not sure. But just being able to be around and always be there to cook dinner, always be there to collect them, all that sort of stuff. So I think that's been a good thing. I think with my our relationship with my wife, I think it's more complex. I think there's almost a feeling. So she works full time, so
Mhm.
and she's always enjoyed her job, and always enjoyed
Mhm.
her career rather. But I think there's almost that thing where because I'm at home and sort of taking on all of the home responsibilities, which is absolutely right, then she in turn seems to just work longer and longer. So it's like, well, I don't need to go home to make dinner. I don't need to go home to pick up the kids. I don't need to go home to do the shopping, whatever. Which she shouldn't have to. But I sort of hope that me doing that, I just think, great. Now I'll be home at the same time, but we now we've got the evening to ourselves. We can do this. We can do this. I think that's perhaps something we need to work on. And I think
Mhm.
as I said, Madeline's already gone. Alexander, 2 years, he'll be gone. So we'll suddenly have that empty nester thing
Mhm.
where we will. look at each other and either go, "Oh my goodness, you're here. Oh, you're here," and then sort of think, "Oh," and either we'll take the chance and we'll spend our time walking around the house naked, heaven forbid, or we'll have an incredibly uplift in our sex life, or we'll look at each other and think, "Gosh, yeah, maybe it was just the kids, really." That's been our whole focus. How do we revitalize what we had? So I think what I'm doing at the moment is sort of acknowledging that that's coming and then
Mhm.
trying to make some changes or decisions or have conversations around it. So before it happens, because I think if we get to a place in 2 years' time, we look at each other and think, gosh, well, this big house, which is lovely, but you're at work all the time. I'm at home all the time. So you leave the house at sort of 7 in the morning, get back at 7 at night, and then we have dinner, watch something on TV, fall asleep, and that's it. It
Mhm.
doesn't, it doesn't feel like where I want to be for the next 20 years. Hopefully we'll look at that and think, how can we use what we have in terms of the different dynamic
Mhm.
to strengthen, revitalize, re-energize the relationship that we have.
Yeah. Yeah. That is interesting. Thinking that hopefully you would have more time together, and yet, it is easy to be like, "Well, if somebody else is taking care of it, then I can just
Yeah.
keep going, keep doing the thing that capitalism wants you to do."
I know it's just hard because we've almost been programmed to feel guilty about taking time really. So that
Yeah.
most people in corporate jobs work more than the hours they're paid for. Or by
Mhm.
certain by I'm sure by
Yes.
20-25%. So every week her work
Mhm.
gets an extra day and a half out of her. And the weekend she'll come and have to do expenses or come and do something else or whatever. And I think, gosh, that's just it feels like a lot. So I do
Yeah.
feel that there's a sort of chance to try and reset and yeah, whilst work's important and you should be enjoyable and obviously it
Mhm.
funds the lifestyle, it's just trying to make sure there's and balance is probably the wrong word. I think harmony is probably a better word. Because
Mhm.
balance is just sort of 50-50. I don't think it is that. I think sometimes I find work can be all encompassing. I won't have time for anything else at all. Other times it's the way around. So I think there's that harmony. I think is more the word that I like to think about.
Mhm.
Yeah, so hopefully we'll get that chance and sort of reconnect, spend more time together and rediscover the things that we used to enjoy or find new things that we enjoy.
Mhm. Yeah, for sure. So, I talked a lot about this on your podcast. I wanted to kind of bring this into talking about the divine feminine, divine
Yeah.
masculine, and you are the first man that I've had on this podcast. So, yeah,
Oh,
I'm getting to pick your
yeah.
brain a little bit of like how you feel. Obviously, you come from a slightly different culture than we have in the US, but I think, our cultures are fairly comparable and we
Yeah, yeah.
influence each other a lot. Of just like how I describe the sacred feminine, sacred masculine, or divine feminine, divine masculine is the divine feminine is kind of this potential energy that can go anywhere, do anything, and create life. And the divine masculine is kind of the container that holds that energy and allows it to kind of focus itself so that it can actually bring that potential energy into something that we can like tangibly hold or see in the 3D world.
Mhm.
And both of those really have to come from like a very integrated, aligned place. I really like to think of the divine masculine as being the container of safety and really providing this safe space for creation to happen. And someone I was just listening to recently talked about how the divine masculine is really like there to protect life. That like the feminine creates life, the masculine is there to protect life. And that doesn't mean like how we have seen in our,
Yeah.
you know, history that people on earth now can remember of like, getting a gun and trying to shoot anything that moves. To me, it's more like creating environments and, like, whole societies that are going to support life, and right now we definitely have societies that basically do the opposite, that we are actively killing life and not supporting humans being able to actually be humans. So, with all that being said, typically still in our society, like men being home in kind of the domestic space is not unheard of anymore, but it's still a little bit more of the outlier
Mm,
than the norm. And I would say doing that shift is kind of coming into the feminine space that we have deemed the feminine space in society. That doesn't necessarily mean that's like part of the divine feminine, but in terms of like how society views masculine and feminine, that is more of the feminine space. So I'm just curious for you as you have gone through some of these shifts and you also have been wanting to come more in, I would say, your feminine space of having more intimate conversations with people, being really vulnerable with people, getting down to the root of like, what are the different elements of humanity that we want to have real, honest conversations around? Was that ever something that was difficult for you? I guess my overarching question is like, what are your relationships to masculinity, to femininity within yourself? And
mm,
how have you seen those shift at all maybe throughout this transition that you've had coming more into a space of like being home more and being more with your children and
mm.
having a new dynamic with your wife and having some like really, I'm sure, amazing conversations with other people about humanity. I'm just curious of how you've noticed some of those things shift or if any of that was hard for you of like, oh wow, this is like totally outside of my comfort zone that maybe you had to work on a little bit.
Wow, that is a far bigger question than I ever asked you. I should have been with you second, but no, it's a brilliant question, and, oh gosh, I've got so much to say about that. So,
Yeah.
you go and get a cup of tea or something and come
Okay.
back. I I think going back in history, I think we've always had this sort of definition of what a male role is, what a female role is, what masculinity is, what femininity is, and I think going back to when we were nomads, the man's job was to go out and hunt for food and protect their village from marauding invaders and look after the women and children. Interestingly, I think back in those days, though, we were far more of a polyamorous society. Whereas,
Mhm.
we used to just read that it was a village to raise a child. It literally was that you wouldn't
Yeah.
necessarily know who the father was, but everybody had joint responsibility for the children and for growing, etc. Then once we decided to stay in one place and start to own property,
Yeah.
that's where things started to started to decline. Even though I came from a property company, once we
Yeah.
went into the whole ownership and this is mine, it's not yours, whether it be my house, my ox, my sheep, my cows, my wife, my children, things changed quite a lot. And I think we perhaps misunderstood the fact that men can have and should demonstrate very feminine traits and feelings. Women can and should demonstrate very masculine traits and feelings. And society created these phrases like "man up," "stop being such a woman,"
Yeah.
ridiculous, ridiculous things that I hope I've
Yeah.
never said, and forgive me, anybody that says you did say that.
Mhm.
I that's the big issue it is. But I think one of the biggest compliments I've had working was when somebody said to me that I was the most vulnerable senior leader that they'd had. And I thought it's such a wonderful thing to hear. And lots of people, "Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, well, that sounds like weakness." And I
Right.
think vulnerability is, to me, is really about being open to understanding and being open to change. So I do think I perhaps lean into my feminine side more than lots of other people would do if
Yeah.
femininity is about nurturing, caring, understanding, etc. That's what I've always felt and always done, really. But it's only probably latterly in my corporate life when I got to a senior enough role that not that I could call the shots, but almost that people aren't going to necessarily challenge what I.
Mhm.
Even though I did have people that were more senior to me saying, "Oh, yeah, I'm really sure you should be sharing that with the team. You're really sure you should be." giving the team that much information or being so transparent, so open, so vulnerable with them? Yes. Because it's just all about trust, isn't it? And I do think there is a real challenge in society today where young men and young women aren't necessarily sure what their roles should be. If you
Mhm.
look at media, whether it's print media, television, film, music, whatever, it represents women in a certain way. But then if women perhaps decide to act in that certain way, they're often shamed for being overly sexual and overly demanding. It's like, gosh, no, that's not very feminine, is it? And
Mhm.
then men, they almost have this nervousness about what their role really is, because scientifically, we don't need men to procreate anymore. Women
Mhm.
don't actually physically need a man to have a baby. It's as simple as that. Sort of science has changed. So I think there's that. I think, gosh, that role is, gosh, how do we justify where we are? So I think the solution is to recognize, no, not to get into the whole gender discussion, but to recognize that our feelings, sensations, genders in many ways are much more fluid than we ever expected.
Yeah.
So I can have a very firm, direct, strong conversation, which maybe people would tag as, well, that's a very masculine way of doing things. And I can
Mhm.
have a very caring, nurturing, calm, transparent, vulnerable conversation with two people and within half an hour of each other. I think it doesn't necessarily change who I am. I always felt that sort of closing off that vulnerability
Mhm.
or more nurturing or quiet side of me was just cutting off half of who I am really. So
Yeah.
I've really thought I'm just a person, and ultimately we're all just energy. We are
Yeah.
energy at the moment. Our container is this skin and these bones. That's a container. We'll die, and our energy will go into something else.
Yep.
We ultimately are just energy. So I think having access to all the energy we can call upon, feminine energy, masculine energy, is so much more powerful and such a better way of being able to talk and communicate.
Mhm.
And the last thing, sorry, I'm going on for too long. But the last thing that I do think we do have a challenge at the moment with a particular area within AI and technology that the sort of phrase sort of tech bro is just thrown around quite a lot. You look at President Trump's inauguration, surrounded by tech bros and Lauren Bezos that was there as well. But generally, a lot of these tech bros were there and who have all of them have a very, very aggressive, masculine
Yeah.
aura. You can almost
Mhm.
see the being very prickly and very, and I think
Yeah.
that's not a good place. I'm not saying that we necessarily should have AI should be 50% men, 50% women. That's not what it's about. It's about whether or not people recognize either are adept enough to recognize there's a gap in their consciousness that they need to bring in outside skill, knowledge, expertise to fulfill that, or to recognize they need to work on themselves to be able to tap into that more feminine, nurturing, developing, cleansing side of things. So I
Mhm.
do that's and sorry, the last thing I'll say on that. Something else that really, really bugs me is, we have ESG and CSR and all those different things, which I think are really important. But a lot of companies will produce reports on inclusion and they'll say, oh, we've got 50% male, 50% female representation. We've got 3 male directors, 3 female directors. Okay, that's fabulous. But when you look at who the people are, they went to private school, Yale or Harvard, McKinsey, government, and now they're the same person. Whether they're
Yeah.
male or female, it's no difference really. So they can't just say, oh, they're different genders, because actually,
Mhm.
ultimately, their influence, their knowledge, experience, it's the same. And that's a challenge. I think diversity of experience, diversity of feeling, diversity of personality is far more important than diversity of gender in many ways. So I do think we need to sort of really, really dig beneath a lot of things companies say about equal representation and balance and all those things. Saying, well, but who are the people that you're listening to? Who are your influence?
Mhm.
That's what I think is missing today, that we don't accept people with different experiences to our own. And that's what I've learned so much in the podcast, is speaking to people that have spent a huge amount of time studying tantra or somatic healing or Reiki or energy transfers, all these things are so powerful, but there's still this nervousness about what we don't understand, I guess.
Mhm.
That's I hope that's changing. I do think it is. And I think we'll either end up with a polarized society in that we'll have people that are like you, that are very understanding and inclusive and warm and welcoming. And hopefully I fall into that a little bit. And then people that are very opposite to us. So I do think we'll have people that will really want to connect more with each other, connect more with nature, connect more with energy, recognize that there's
Mhm.
more physical presence, that there is this energy that we all share and we can transfer.
Mhm.
I'm not sure what I answered then, sorry. But it's, yeah, it's such a fascinating topic. And the way you described the sacred feminine and feminine energy when we spoke, I listened back to it and it was really powerful, really made me think about, well, how do we tap into this? Because we all have it. It's not something we have
Yeah.
to go out and find. You don't have to read a book about it. It's all within us. We just
Yeah.
have to realize that we're not becoming any less of a man or a woman by accepting our feminine and masculine
Mhm.
energy. I think it strengthens us, if anything. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I guess I wanna dig a little bit deeper too and understand, like, who have your influences been? Because just like you're saying, we have all of those energies within all of us. It doesn't matter what gender in society you are. We all are created from an egg and a sperm. We all have both divine feminine and divine masculine energy within us. And all of us have been under a patriarchal society that have made us all be more in our masculine energy and really repress a lot of our feminine energy because feminine has been seen as bad. And honestly, it's more about that if we are all integrated and have both of these energies, we are a lot harder to control. And so if
Yeah.
we suppress the feminine and make it seem like, women, if we're feminine, then we're just crazy, hysterical, or we're too much and we don't want that. But as long as you like stay in this specific role that we've given you, that's fine. And then if men are too feminine, then they're seen as weak and can't live in the masculine world because, like you said, they're too vulnerable, they're too emotional, and
Mm,
that's not what we want in men because we want them to be like the stoic protector that does everything on the masculine side, but nothing on the feminine side. And so it just like it blows my mind that you just say this so plainly like this is something everybody should think and I totally agree. And yet it seems to just come so easy and naturally to you, which I'm sure it's not necessarily the case. You've had a lot of years, I'm sure, to move through the things that we are given in society and come to this. But I want to know for you, like, how did you arrive here? Was this even the topics that you chose to talk about in a podcast? I mean, you're having really amazing, vulnerable conversations with people. And there's not a lot of men that are doing that. And so I just wonder for you, like, is this always something that has felt pretty integrated for you? And you're just an amazing soul that came to this world to like talk about these things? Or is this something that you have had to work through for yourself and kind of figuring
mm,
out how do I how do I bridge both of these energies in myself and feel comfortable and safe in that?
mm. I never really thought about what the root cause of that, if that's the right phrase. But I do think, and then because of my upbringing, my dad's job, once he left the coal mines, we moved areas quite often. So I moved school, I think, when I was 11, and then moved school again when I was sort of 14. And then I often moved at very pivotal times during the education. So I didn't really have friends growing up that were close to. I didn't go to university. Didn't have that group of. My wife goes back to Australia and she has the same friends she had when she was 15, and they all get
Mhm.
together and it's like they've seen each other yesterday. It's amazing. I don't have any of that, which I think is it's not. Oh my gosh, woe me. So my comfort and my the place I found everything really. this is probably quite an old-fashioned thing to talk about today, was in books.
Yeah.
Gosh, when I was at middle school, I read every book in the school library. I read a book a day, and I just, no matter what it was about, it could be science fiction, it could be a house building, it could be whatever, nursery rhymes. I'm so fortunate that I could pick up a book and a fiction book and be in that place. I could imagine it, I could feel it, I could taste it. Also, I felt even before I sort of ever got on a plane or been anywhere, that I'd travel to the furthest reaches of the earth, far out into the universe, deep under the sea, deep into people's souls, and I could imagine and really empathize without knowing what the word meant at the time. Really empathize with how people felt. And I think each interaction I had with a different character left a small, without meaning to wishy-washy, almost a small mark on my soul in a way. So I feel that my soul and my energy is made up of all these tiny fractions of stories and thoughts and feelings and energies other people have. I think once I sort of not got past the reading stage, but once I'd sort of then gone out and met people at work and had different managers, different bosses, different colleagues, different peers, different friends, etc. Each one of them left an imprint, for better or worse. Some were terrible. I had some terrible managers, had some wonderful managers. I always found it much, much easier, more enjoyable, more empowering to work with and for women.
Mhm.
So apart from my last boss, who was a guy, but he was very in touch with everything. He was quite similar to me, actually. He probably wouldn't admit it, but he was quite similar to me. And we got on incredibly well. But prior to that, my best managers, best leaders ever were women. And and I used to love working for these women. When I was younger, I'm sure a lot of the time that would manifest as I had a crush on lots of them. When I was sort of 18, 19, and they were like 30, 35, 40, whatever. So they had this, I'll do anything for you. It's almost a worshipness.
Mhm.
And but yeah, I just got so much from what they were doing. And then when some of them were a little bit older and they had children, and then their children, and they bring other stories to work and bring all these things into my life that I had no knowledge of. So I'd got no nieces, nephews, and never babysat anything like that at all. So they bring all these different dynamics into my sphere of knowledge. And I think
Mhm.
that's where all this came from. I thought, well, actually, if I enjoyed it so much, wouldn't it be, again, selfish but amazing to actually just reach out and ask people to talk about this stuff? And people generally that are in touch with themselves in I guess in perhaps a non-traditional way, are
Mhm.
just so open and so conversational and so warm generally. And that's what I find the most interesting is people that on the surface you might have a very set view of what a porn actress is like, or a porn director, or a sex worker, or a dominatrix, or a sex worker, sorry, or a sexologist, or whatever. You have a very clear view of what they are. When you talk to
Mhm.
them now and hear and feel their stories, it just adds something to my knowledge and what I know. And that's what I hope the podcast, I don't know what your podcast does, is sort of share that with people. And I
Mhm.
think we have to be selfish about wanting to acquire knowledge and intelligence and therefore feelings.
Mhm.
I think is what's missing at the moment because we do have a pretty global political narrative that so-called might is right, very male dominated, very aggressive, very take, which ultimately will be found out to be a failure. It won't
Mhm.
ever in history has been a positive thing
Yeah.
because so much more can be achieved by understanding and wanting to learn. That's my biggest thing in life is an absolute thirst to learn something new, whether it be gosh, must be about 10 years ago now. I became a Reiki practitioner and I loved how energy felt and how the transference of energy between people felt. So I think any chance I get to learn something new in a
Mhm.
conversation with whoever is just so empowering. That's where I think reading was my first entry into, wow, there's all these worlds out there I might
Yeah.
never get to see, but actually I've been to them all. So that people that when I
Mhm.
go to a house and there's not a book in sight, or people say, I just don't like reading. I can watch it on TV. It's the same. It's really not, because you have a book and you can just imagine for yourself,
Mhm.
you can create these worlds, these vistas, these sensations. And you can read anything. That's why, yeah, I think most research shows that written erotica is far
Mhm.
more powerful than
Oh,
hard
yeah.
porn, because yes, you can imagine, you can feel it, and the feelings that reading
Mhm.
something else, the words and passion gives you is so powerful. So
Mhm.
I do wish people would read more and take more from the words that they're reading. That's where I first encountered all these different worlds and feelings that I couldn't explain at the time, and sensations that I still wouldn't be able to define now, but just
Mhm.
took me to different places and expanded what I thought I knew. So I know now that I know so little. I know so little, but I just have this voracious hunger to learn more. That's what drives me now, is just the chance to learn more stuff about anything. Just fill my mind with stuff is what I want to keep doing.
Yeah. So cool. I You and I are so similar in that way. I'm not a huge reader, but I am, like, a lover of knowledge,
Uh-huh.
and I think we need more of that right now. Less consuming of random stuff that we don't need, and more consumption of knowledge and connection with each other. So,
It's just about being thoughtful, isn't it? Because
yeah.
there's so much content creation. I'm not sure what the stat is, but it's probably, I don't know, 100 hours of YouTube videos uploaded every minute or something. There's probably, a million Instagram posts have been posted since we started talking. But it's that thoughtful consumption. Do I want
Mhm.
to watch this documentary? Do I want to listen to this podcast? Do I want to go for an hour-long walk in the countryside and just listen? It's amazing when you're outside and you just listen. Don't have anything in your ears.
Mhm.
Don't think. Just listen. It's amazing how much those sounds can bring you knowledge. So I think that whole thoughtful consumption and thoughtful seeking of information and knowledge is so powerful. Because it's
Mhm.
very easy to be bombarded with news.
Mhm.
When I was younger, we had 3 television channels in the UK, 3 TV channels. It was 4, then it was 5, and now it's probably like
Mhm.
thousands. And we had a couple of main, newspapers, and that was it. There was no internet, there was no smartphone, there was no social media, anything like that at all. And in a way, that was bad, because all the information we had was very tightly controlled by media barons on one side, news corporations on the other, and they told you what you needed to hear. Whereas
Yeah.
now we have the chance to go and find out anything for ourselves, but a lot of us are quite lazy and will still just accept whatever Fox News or CBS or whoever tells us. We won't spend the time to actually go and seek knowledge. We just absorb information. I think there's a big difference between information and knowledge. And knowledge is something we have to work to achieve and work to attain. But that's
Mhm.
where the power and the joy is, really, of knowing something, as opposed
Yeah.
to just hearing something or just being told something. I think knowing something is it's amazing. When you know something about somebody or something, or an activity
Mhm.
or anything, whatever, it's incredibly powerful.
Mhm. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think I love that you are so open to all different places of taking knowledge or understanding things. That we can get knowledge from a book. We can also get knowledge from speaking to a person. We can also understand for ourselves, like, how do I tune into my intuition and get knowledge from just how my body feels in a moment, or being in nature? What can nature teach me just about how I am also connected to nature, and that we are actually mammals and essentially animals that are part of, the whole ecosystem of our world, not just these beings that live above everything else.
It's
So,
funny, isn't it? Just
yeah.
sorry to interrupt. It's funny that
No.
for so long, I think we've thought of like humans,
Mm.
us,
Yeah.
and nature, like two
Mhm.
separate things. And
Mhm.
I'm not thinking, well, we just, if you look at the universe, debate how old it is, but say it's 10 billion years old, 15 billion years.
Mm.
Our time in the universe
Mhm.
is a half a second on a 24-hour clock. We're so insignificant.
Yeah.
And all the research shows that if we all died out tomorrow, then animals, insects would thrive and grow and
Mhm.
achieve incredible status. But we have this thing, or we've always had this thing about it, was us and nature. We're trying to control nature, we're trying to manage nature, we're trying to harvest nature,
Mhm.
not thinking that we are part of nature. And I do, and this is going to sound a little bit esoteric, but I do think that being in the presence of somebody with knowledge, suddenly with lived experience, almost sometimes without even talking to them, I feel I'm almost absorbing, almost via osmosis, their feelings on it. My next door neighbour's 86, and she's been an incredible artist all her life. She paints, she pots, she's fabulous. And just when I go out, sit and talk to her, and we talk, and just being in her presence
Mhm.
uplifts me, energizes me, and brings me joy. And the same with you. When I'm with you, I feel a warmth and a joy by just being with you, not even having to
Mhm.
say anything. And that's perhaps what we might come to understand in decades, centuries, millennia, that actually we exchange a lot more energy with each other beyond words. Yes, looks and feelings and touch and all those things are good things. But I think even without those things, we do exchange energy. We do leave an imprint on our people that we meet.
Mhm.
And I hope we'll see more research into that.
Yeah.
Sorry, I interrupted.
No. I feel like my brain is not great with words today, so you're helping me shape what I'm trying to say. So, I think we're already getting there, but I wanted to bring you a little bit more global. We've really
Mhm.
focused in on you, and you and I started our conversation before we hit record on just kind of what is happening in the US right now, how that's influencing everyone else in the world, and how they're kind of watching what is happening here in real time. And I know you had mentioned to me in your podcast that you are, I believe I remember this right, doing a PhD in philosophy.
Yeah, yeah.
And so obviously, like, everything could be philosophical, but I wonder if there's anything really interesting you right now in terms of like a philosophical question that we as humanity are kind of grappling with. I'm sure there are like a million philosophical questions that we're all grappling or could grapple with at the moment. But if there's anything that kind of stands out to you, or maybe that you're learning about right now that you feel like would be good to talk about kind of
Mm.
where we're at in the
Mhm.
world and our kind of evolution
Mm.
as human beings, as we've kind of already started to talk about.
And these thoughts are going to probably come out quite randomly. So I haven't necessarily thought about this in that context, but I do think the big thing at the moment that I think we should consider more and understand more is whether the things that we are doing, the decisions we're making, the choices we take, we're doing them ethically.
Mhm.
And ethically to me means it means that it's the right thing to do in the view of the majority of people. So I think
Yeah.
there are things that we can do that are unethical, we can call them out very easily. Things we can do that are ethical, we can call them out very easily. But generally, most things are in that sort of grey area. Of course they are. There's some
Mm.
people will disagree with, some people will agree with. But I think generally, if we look at the decisions that have been taken, whether it be with immigration in the US or the desire to take over Greenland or Russia invading Ukraine or Israel and Hamas, etc., where are we approaching that from an ethical standpoint? How would our grandchildren view what we've done?
Yeah.
How would people that never meet us view what we've done? So from an ethical consideration, and I don't think ethical or ethically or ethics is something we hear very much about in politics. And
No.
ultimately the world is politics, ultimately. It's because we're saying before we hit record that the majority of news in the UK and in Europe, and even indeed in Australia and further afield, is primarily what's happening in the US, because the US is such a big player, particularly at the moment.
Mhm.
It's so dominant, it's so fast moving that it dictates a lot of the news that we have. So our Prime Minister today has gone up to China. And there's lots of debate about whether he should be there or not. Some are saying he shouldn't be there, he should be. working my close with the Americans. Some are saying, no, I should be pulling back from America. I'm working my close with the Chinese. And it just becomes so political because all of the countries that we have today, apart from islands, I guess, are based on arbitrarily drawn lines on a map. It's
Yeah.
extraordinary. You look at the maps of some parts of Africa and it's a straight line. It's crazy. Look at states in the US, how they're configured. Look at US and Mexico and all. It's all one landmass. But
Right.
over time, politically, you've got Alaska that's sort of stuck onto the side of Canada. Is it
Mhm.
completely arbitrary?
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the big challenges that whether our politicians are making decisions that are ethically balanced, and I don't necessarily think they are. I think there's a very, very strong, probably the strongest I've ever known, insularity, if that's such a word. A very, very insular view of how things should be done. We're doing this thing for my electorate. And that's where things like climate change and environmental considerations are so, so, so challenging
Yeah.
because most of the emissions globally have been generated by countries in the Northern Hemisphere, so the US, so Russia, so the UK, Europe, whatever, all the time during the Industrial Revolution when we were building, manufacturing, all those things. But the people that suffer the most are people in the Southern Hemisphere who haven't contributed anything to global emissions. But this, this thing about, well, change something in your country because it's going to affect somebody in the Maldives or Pakistan
Mhm.
or Afghanistan, whatever. It's a very hard sell if you're a politician.
Mhm.
Donald Trump's never going to say to Americans, right, we're going to stop drilling for oil. We're going to go, everything's going to be windmills and solar power because there's risk of floods in Pakistan. It just not, because politically that would be suicide, which is terrible, but that isn't an ethical way of doing things.
Mhm.
So I think one of the challenges is that from a global perspective, most governments, most decisions that are made with very short-term goals in mind
Yeah.
because our political systems, Donald Trump would be gone in 3 years, it'd be the next person. In the UK, it's a 5-year parliament. You have 4-year parliaments. France, it's 5-year parliament. So thinking 10, 20, 30, 50 years in the future, it just isn't something we do. But I think if
Mhm.
we had ethics running through as a sort of a ribbon through everything we did, those things seems to be better.
Yeah.
And I don't say that in a sort of wishy-washy, sort of soft, sort of liberal sort of way, but I just think doing things ethically
Yeah.
is a positive way of doing things. I think it's a positive way of doing business. It's a positive way of seeing growth and seeing
Mhm.
people want to stay and people learn and people develop and people stay with the same company for 10, 20, 30 years. People grow and we see profits, but we don't see profits as the only goal, whether that's political profit or commercial profit. I think
Mhm.
having ethics standpoint is the key, is for me, is the key philosophical
Yeah.
and real question that affects us. Is this the best ethical choice?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
I
getting
think
quite jumped, but yeah, I think ethics is a big thing. It has to
Yeah,
be.
it does. It does. And I feel like the thing that I'm picking up that's running through all of that, that I also have been seeing in my own life as a structure that is eroding is something you already said of, like, all the things that we have deemed as this is its own entity or what's yours is yours, what's mine is mine. Like, these are all concepts and just random
Yeah.
structures that we created. And we used to be, like you said, much more communal and sharing all of our resources as a species together. And we've gotten so far from that. I I don't have a great, like, through line with this, but, yesterday I was at, or maybe it wasn't yesterday, it was a couple days ago. I was at a bakery with my son, and I just feel like how we police children around, like, "Oh, this is my stuff. This is our stuff." Like, we're gonna try to, like, keep our own little corner over here because we don't wanna disrupt anyone else. I had this moment of feeling like it's so weird that we're, like, in a what we would call, like, a third space where, like, we're all, like, coming together to, like,
Mhm.
be around other people, and yet we're still so, like, "Oh, I have to stay at my table. I have to, like, make sure my stuff isn't, like, getting into anyone else's way. We have the things that we bought, and that's the only thing that we can have with us. It There was just a moment where I was like, I feel like I'm very much, like, teaching him to be like, "We just stay in this little box and don't, like, interact with other people." And it was weird to me, and I think I have had a feeling of, like, the way that we have structured our society and wanting children to, grow, go to college, get a job, then you get a house, then you have to, like, build wealth just based on your own little family unit. And of course, there's, like, generational wealth that mostly white people are able to access, but there's so much around, like, everybody has to just do this themselves. And I really see that eroding. I really feel like we're going to come back to this place where, yeah, we don't have these arbitrary lines on a map anymore, that we are thinking much more globally about us as a species instead of just who is, yeah, in my district. Or honestly, the people that are in charge right now, they don't care about anyone but themselves. They have no
No.
care whatsoever as long as they somehow, like, survive the apocalypse, which is definitely not gonna happen because they're alone. They don't give any credence to the power of community. But I feel like that's where we're coming back to because we have to in order to start to think about these questions again and to, try to stand up against the powers that are trying to say, like, we get to do whatever we want to you. And we're like, no, you actually don't get to do whatever you want to us because we have way more people than you do. And if we work together, we can tell you no. And so I just think all of this really comes down to, yeah, how do we start to think about each other as a community again, a global community, local communities? How do we start to share resources with each other again? Stop feeling like we all have to do life alone and, like, figure out how to gain our own resources just for, like, the people that live in your house.
Yeah.
Um, I really feel like all of that is starting to reshape itself.
Mm. So a couple of things on that. First thing I want to say is that the biggest advantage your son has in life is he has you as a mom to guide him and to show him things, and he's incredibly fortunate to have you. And I'm sure his father's just as sort of powerful of influence in his life. I think secondly, I think we globally, we have enough food and water and I think food, we have enough food to feed everybody 2.5 times over each year. So there's no
Mhm.
shortage globally of food, whether that be rice, vegetables, or whatever. We have no shortage of food whatsoever. The big issue is, I'm pretty sure it's the same in the US. I think in the UK, 31% of all food is wasted, whether that's during a manufacturing process, in retail, or at home, it's just thrown away, discarded.
Yeah,
And I'm sure it's the same in the US. We have,
I'm sure,
yeah,
if
huge
not
levels
more.
we have huge levels of obesity in most of the developed nations. So we tend to eat more than we ever did before, and we certainly eat far more meat and fish and
Mhm.
all the sort of fellow creatures than we ever did before, which is not a good thing. I think one of the big changes I think, and I do agree with you, I think that I feel is coming is how we define success. So I think we used to define success hundreds of years ago as, do I have enough? Do I have enough food to sort
Yeah.
of feed the family and the
Mhm.
village and the tribe or whatever? And that was enough. Then once we moved into houses and apartments and streets and things, we might be the first person on the street to get a car. So, oh my gosh, I've got a car. Wow, isn't that amazing? It's amazing.
Mhm.
The next door neighbor gets a better car, and suddenly your car doesn't feel like it's a good car. Then everybody in the street gets a car. Some people
Yeah.
get two cars. Some people get sports cars, and you're left feeling bereft because you've ventured into this comparison culture, which is what's
Mhm.
destroyed us for so many decades. I think is because nothing's your car hasn't changed. Your experience with
Mhm.
your car, nothing's changed at all. You still got the same car. It's amazing. You can do what you want to do with it.
Yeah.
It's just when you look at everybody else, when you're in a cafe and somebody else has an amazing muffin and you can only afford a coffee or whatever. Oh gosh, I really want that muffin. but it's just because we see what other people have and decide that's what we want. And I
Mhm.
do think we will have to see a more open approach to possessions
Yes.
and what is ours and what isn't ours. And I'm not talking about like a communist utopia or, just put everything into the communal pot and it's
Yeah.
divided up by the government, because that always goes horrendously wrong as well. But just a willingness to be more able to share, really.
Yeah.
If somebody doesn't have something, then give that person something. And it tends to be, and it's often the sort of trope of movies and things, but it tends to be the people that have the least or have less that are more willing to give than the people that have the most. Because
Mhm.
people that have a lot, I guess, have accumulated a lot because they've been very possessive and very, it's mine.
Mhm.
Where someone that doesn't have a lot. So, well, I've only got, 4 slices of bread left, but you can have 3 of them. Because
Mhm.
whereas somebody that's got, 10 loaves in the cupboard, no, I'm going to keep those. It's,
Mhm.
it's like when you see there's a warning of a flood or a hurricane or whatever, people rush to the supermarket and buy 20 loaves of bread or 100 bottles of water. Well, are you buying that for the whole community, or is that just for your house? Then at the end of the hurricane, you're going to throw away 9 loaves of bread out of the 10. It's just that recognition that if we can share with people, it's a good thing. I
Mhm.
think there's so much research, scientific research, that shows that doing a good deed to somebody you feel it's a good deed has a more positive impact on the person doing the deed than the person the deed's done for.
Yeah.
So if you're on a coffee line and you pay for someone's coffee behind you or whatever, you feel far better about doing that than the person behind you. And whether that's a good or bad thing, I'm still not quite sure. But there is definitely that notion that actually doing something for somebody else is doing something for you as well. So
Mhm.
sharing it, or asking somebody to join you, or sitting at a table with somebody that seems to be lonely by themselves, or
Mhm.
buying somebody coffee, or it just a nice thing to do. I
Mhm.
think nice is a nice is an underappreciated word, but I do think hopefully people will see the value in sharing and communal access to things, and realize that we don't necessarily need to own a car or own things. We can rent or lease or share or have access to. I do think that
Mhm.
feels a better place to be, rather than having to just own everything, lock your door with 3 locks
Yeah.
and bolt it. And that feels like it feels like the place that lots of kings and queens and leaders had in medieval times, where eventually their subjects overthrew them
Mhm.
because they see that we haven't got bread, but you're eating cake, or it just doesn't feel right. So hopefully we don't get to like a physical revolution, but hopefully a mental revolution,
Yeah.
that we realize actually sharing is not a bad thing to do. It's a good thing to do. And I think with children, I think children are so innocent until they're not. So I
Mhm.
can remember kids were 3 and 4 and 5 and 6, and they go to the playground and they'd be sort of, they'd be playing with other kids or whatever on the swings or the pushchairs, the seesaws and things,
Mhm.
running over and saying, "Oh, can Johnny come to tea? You're my best friend." You just met him like 2 seconds ago. They'll run over to them and they'll start playing to them or chat to them, talk to them. They're in a play group and they'll all just sit there and play and chat and talk. Whereas if 10 adults go into a room, you sort of might meander over to somebody and say, "Oh, hello. I'm Andrew. What do you do?" And he feels so embarrassed, so awkward. Whereas children have this complete, beautiful naivety and innocence. Everybody likes them.
Yeah.
That everybody wants to be their friend. And it's sad that we're taught that that's not the case. But maybe it
Yeah.
is. Maybe people do want to be our friend, but we've
Mhm.
just learned that we need to protect what we have and protect ourselves from other people, because
Yeah.
they're potentially going to take it from us, as
Mhm.
opposed to want to share with us or experience the joy with us. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's it's really interesting. And I think that links
Mhm.
very closely to something we talked about last week, is pleasure. So where does pleasure come from?
Mhm.
Pleasure something that sitting in your counting house, counting your gold brings you? Or is it sitting by a river having a very cheap makeshift picnic with friends? It's probably the latter. It's
Yeah.
just, yeah, understanding what is pleasurable
Mhm.
and allowing yourself to accept pleasurable feelings and sensation.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Thank you for bringing pleasure back into this because,
It's important, isn't it?
yeah.
It's in that something I didn't experience at a very early age. I think that
Mhm.
certainly that whole self-pleasure, understanding what brought me physical pleasure, what brought me emotional pleasure, apart from reading, was quite it was something that wasn't in my life really. But I do think recognizing what brings us pleasure allows us to connect with other people and
Mhm.
experience pleasure with somebody else. Pleasure of a
Mhm.
conversation, pleasure of holding somebody's hand, pleasure of eating food with somebody, pleasure of watching a film with somebody, pleasure of walking outside with somebody, pleasure of being in bed with somebody. All these things are pleasurable activities, but I think you've got to know what pleasure means to you, really, to be able to truly share energy with somebody else, which I think is what
Mhm.
pleasure is about, that shared energy.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. And my mission with this podcast is to like create a blueprint for the world that we want after hopefully the it's probably going to be a simultaneous happening of things are crumbling as we are like trying to birth something new, but we have to be open to talking about like what do we want next? If we don't want this, then what do we want next? And we don't want to go back to just how it was before. We want something that's completely revolutionary and different. And I think this is really one of the core things that I see as something that I think we all want. We all want to be more connected. We all want to be able to not feel so much pressure. I know me and my siblings, like my whole generation is just feeling so much pressure to live up to the standards that like our parents had, but we've had no way of getting there in the circumstances that we have lived through in our lives. And
Yeah.
there's this feeling of like, oh my gosh, I'm not going to achieve the things that my parents achieved. But I really feel like this time, again, is starting to break those things down and say, just like you said, like the measure of success is going to be so different. And like, how pleasurable would it be if we started to measure success or like our value in society based on how much connection we can have with each other, how much rest we can do in a day, how much just shared resources we could have within a community that if a whole community was taken care of, that's success instead of us all having to do that individually. So I just think it's so cool to have these conversations and to really dream into what that could look like.
So I think one of the things we've fixated on as a society is the length of life that we live, and we
Mhm.
haven't spent time thinking about the quality of life that we live. So I
Yes.
think, only 100 years ago, the average age in the UK you died, it was 50 or something like that. Yeah, I'm probably wrong, but I say it was 50. Now it's 80. But if those last 10 or 15 years are spent in and out of hospital, they're spent maybe with dementia, with
Mhm.
dealing with cancer, with illness, with all these things being kept alive by, a cornucopia of pills and potions and things, is that life quality? So I do think living a pleasurable and fulfilling life, no matter how short or long that life may be, is so much more important than just trying to eke out a very
Mhm.
dry, very unsatisfying life, really. And
Mhm.
sometimes I just want to go and sell everything up and go and live in a small villa in Costa
Yeah.
Rica near the beach. And I think sometimes I think that'd be so much joy in that. But I think I miss other people.
Yes.
If I could have a if I could have a commune and you and your husband and child could come, my kids could come, some friends could come, some like-minded people could be there. It'd be
Yeah.
amazing. But I do almost that, and you've taken this mantle really very very bravely of almost recognizing that your mission in life is to help other people connect and communicate and almost to help people find the right frequency, if that makes sense. Sometimes I
Mhm.
feel that in the old days, radio, you sort of tune the radio with a dial and you get and you get the right thing. I think sometimes our frequency is not quite right. Now I really
Mhm.
feel very attune frequency with you, which I hopefully you feel the same. And I think that's the more and more people we can get onto the same frequency.
Mhm.
I think frequency, vibration, energy, it's all part of the same thing. It's
Yeah.
all how we choose to share who we are and what we are and how people embrace that. Then
Yeah.
that's what's super important, regardless of where we live and how far apart we are, all those things. It's almost more powerful that you're in the US, I'm in the UK, but we have the same
Yeah.
different time zones, everything. It's light where you are, it's dark where I am, but we have the same frequency, and that's incredible, isn't it?
It
That's
is.
just incredible, mind blowing in a way.
Yeah.
Um, it's because you and I met by happenstance. Lots of people do the same thing. You just reach out to somebody, you have no idea where the conversation or the dialogue is going to go. But I think if both of you are open, regardless of your gender, ethnicity, age, experience, location, all those things, you can tune into the same frequency if you just allow yourself almost to receive the energy that's coming in.
Mhm.
That sounds very that sounds very sort of cultish, really. But you know what I mean? That just getting on the
Yeah.
right frequency with people, just finding people that are in the best possible use of the word, your tribe, your people. And I
Mhm.
send my daughter to university now, and she's taught us a lot about finding her tribe, finding her people at university.
Yeah.
Because they're from all over the country, different backgrounds, some private schools, some public schools, some posh, some poor, some rich, some whatever.
Mhm.
It's just finding people that are your sort of people. It's your flatmates, people in your course, people in the pub, whatever. And she sort of said, "Yeah, I really find my tribe now." I really like that. Just how
Mhm.
it feels that, yeah, there's that energy and that resonance you get with people. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I've kept you also for a long time, and I know it's evening for you. So
We should do a weekly call, just do a weekly episode. Kayla and
I
Andrew talk.
I
I could
that
just
would
honestly
be
feel like literally one sort of
great.
question 1 of page 3,000 that we could sort of talk about.
I
Um,
know. I your expression of tuning people to the same frequency, I love that, and I hope you don't mind if I steal that because I think
no, please do.
that's exactly what w I'm doing, but also we are doing, and I don't know, I feel like maybe you and I have met each other in some other lifetime because, yes,
100%.
these
100%. Like,
conversations have just been so easy and so fluid, and I know you gave a disclaimer about yourself in the beginning, but I think you've completely lived up to the feelings that I feel when we're in conversation together, and again, as a woman, it's not very often that I feel that with another man, and, just again, like you said, somebody random that you just
yeah.
said yes to having a conversation together, didn't know that it was gonna feel so easy.
It's just, I think a lot of the things that you do and hopefully the things that I do to a less high quality, I think it's about holding space for somebody really.
Yeah.
So I think we're often thinking of the answer before we've sort of heard the question. And I
Mhm.
feel what you do so well is you talk. It's as good as good. And then
Yeah.
you answer a question, but then you're listening to the answer. You're not thinking, right, what I'm going to ask next. And I think
Yeah.
that's what I think is where people get the deepest connection is actually being able to listen to. I mean, and they always say we've got one mouth and two ears, but we use
Mhm.
the one twice as much as the two. I think just being able to listen to somebody, think actually, gosh, yeah. Because a lot of things you've asked me about today about what are the big philosophical questions? How do we connect? How do we share with each other? All those things. It's really going to make me think when I've left this call. And I think the leave this call rather. And that's what you want, isn't it? You want to have a conversation, but then it come back to you in a few days' time. And it was the same when I first called. I kept thinking, gosh, yeah, yeah, she did say that. And I sort of read through the transcript and listened to it as well. Is things you say come back, and it's yeah, the story about you and your son in the bakery and sharing and people. It's really gonna sit with me and make me think about well, how can we share that frequency with more people? How can we amplify the
Mhm.
frequency? It's not just a local radio station; it becomes a nationwide, global frequency, and
Mhm.
it's not overly. It's not being arrogant or thinking, well, we can do this and nobody else can. It's thinking, well, everybody can. If we
Mhm.
just connect me with you and you with him and him
Mhm.
with her and me with her and him. It just becomes so quickly
Mhm.
the whole compound nature of things.
Yeah.
Hopefully 5 people listen to this call, 10 people, 20 people, 100 people. They pass on to somebody else, somebody else, somebody else, and that's where the power comes, I think, is just if we can amplify the frequency
Yeah.
is where we get the biggest results.
Yeah. For sure. Well, maybe we should start another podcast.
100%, I'd be up for that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
100% we'll need to meet in person one day.
We do.
Sure.
Do.
It does feel like this isn't the first time I've
It does.
experienced your energy.
It does.
So in whatever form that came in previous lives, but,
Yeah.
and we haven't talked about religion at all or beliefs and things. I'll leave that to another time, but
Yeah.
I think energy is just a big thing, and
Mhm.
you just get a sense of I have a sense that your energy is already imprinted on me before.
Mhm.
Going back to something that feels very comfortable in a very nice way, not in a comfortable in a negative way. So
Mhm. Yes. Yeah.
I'll stop talking now. But thank you for having me. And gosh, I'm so overawed. I'm the first guy you've had on the podcast. So hopefully I didn't let down the divine masculine and I
No.
showed my sacred
No.
feminine side as well.
No. I didn't want that to feel like pressure to you. I
Thank you for
wanted
not
it to
telling me
feel like
before.
an honor, hopefully.
Absolutely.
Uh, but I definitely feel like the spaces I've been in for a long time, it's been a lot about, like, women empowerment, and rightfully so. Again, like, women have not had it easy in our society at
Absolutely.
all.
Yeah.
But I'm starting to find my edge of, like, at least for myself, I still really want to empower women and work with women, but I really wanna get into also helping men find their place too, and feeling like we can, again, like, all come together just as human beings, and we all
Yeah.
have our place, and it doesn't need to be, you know, women only all the time or men
Yeah.
only all the time, that we can start to commingle again and feel like we can all come back to being both in the divine feminine, divine masculine, and how do we co-create that within our relationships, within our households.
Yeah.
Um, so it's I think that's another part of this evolution is just continuing to feel safe enough to, like, start to bring everybody into the tent instead of start just being in, like, our little siloed spaces, which, again, like, safe spaces have been really important for marginalized people,
Definitely.
and I think it's time to start, like, bridging those gaps a little bit. Um,
And
so
that's what's so powerful to me about hearing you talk is that sometimes as a middle-aged white bloke, I feel like a fraud, like I shouldn't be talking about this sort of stuff. I should be leaving it to people that actually have experienced some of the challenges that I feel are so important. But that's why I think yeah, I do think, yeah, women have been done dirty for, for hundreds of years. There's no getting around it. But
yeah.
having me say it doesn't, I sometimes feel disgenuine. I really don't want to ever feel like that. I don't want
Mhm,
to come across as being somebody that's just jumping onto something. I feel that, so that's why I think your voice saying it actually, yes, this is super important, but actually the real power comes from all these energies mixing together. Because energy doesn't
mhm.
have gender or a or a
No.
ethnicity or an age or that. Energy is just energy. And that's where the power comes. You want everybody to feel safe. You want everybody to have the space they need
Mhm,
and then to look for and accept and listen to and learn from others' energy. I think
mhm.
that's ultimately what it comes down to.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Well, I think we should wrap up now. So,
Yeah, I've got to go and cook dinner. Alexander would bang
yeah.
my door otherwise. Yeah.
Yeah. I so appreciate this time with you. I think as we've said for the last, like, 10 minutes, it's been so
It's a
lovely.
mutual admiration society. No,
So it's
it's been
so
lovely.
lovely.
It's really nice. Yeah.
Yeah. So until next time, I
Yeah,
will see you when I see you, and
you will.
thank you so much to all the listeners listening. I know this was a long episode, but I hope you really enjoyed it, and I will talk to you in my next one. Take care, all.
Thank you.